Okay.
All right. So we're gonna talk about the man who fell to earth, starring David Bowie. So okay, why don't you start first? What did you think about the movie? Did you like it? Dislike it? Let's start with general stuff.
Well, first of all, I would like to greet everybody, and yes, I think this movie is particularly interesting. I propose to talk about it because it is the debut of David Bowie as an actor in cinema, which is already pretty interesting to talk about. Let us say it is a movie pretty well. Let us say, inserted inside its both Bowie's development as an artist, I would say, and the social situation of the time. Is a movie that came out in '76, and because yes, I did quite like this movie, regardless of the fact that many people have on the internet and around have even criticized me for this opinion and say they didn't quite like it. I did. I found it interesting on the cinematographical perspective and on the general conceit of the plot. I didn't quite notice the first time I saw it that it was based on a book that pre-existed the movie, but I was aware of a certain connection we will probably talk about later between David Bowie and Philip K. Dick and this movie, and that would have had an influence on the book Valis. That
Yeah.
probably we'll talk about later.
So I guess so we are joined by Zarathustra Serpent today, and I guess my first question to him would be like, do you think that the only reason why people remember this movie is because David Bowie was in it? Oh,
So, hi everyone again. Look, no, Nicholas Roeg is an interesting director, and that's very unique director, and that's a very typical film of his. His previous film before that was what was it? Don't Look Now, was it? It's this horror film with Donald Sutherland, really creepy in Venice. Also a classic horror. This is a very interesting science fiction movie. Again, very unique. For Bowie, very important. It's part of his, like you said. It is actually encounters part of his development. As you know, Bowie was always playing with identity. Every album was a new identity, and this is one of the identities actually, and which affected then successive albums.
yeah.
I'm for those who don't know, I'm an expert on Bowie. So
I see.
Yeah.
Did you find the movie through Bowie, or did you know about it before from elsewhere?
I think I was aware of it. It was a pretty famous movie. It was not an unknown movie. It was shown on TV. It was
I see.
not very famous, but yeah, it was a known movie. It's Nicholas Roeg.
Yeah. So thoughts.
I mean, the collaboration with Bowie certainly contributed into making it famous, at least niche famous for a long while. Since Bowie, as far as I know, used various clips from the movie in his musical videos in that period. Am I right?
No, not didn't have video clips yet, but the next two album covers that he did
Yeah.
were from the movie.
Oh yeah, okay. Album covers. I thought you used like stills, like scenes from the movie, the videos or something.
Yeah.
I must have misunderstood.
Yeah. So I guess given that you mentioned Bowie's acting earlier, thoughts. So the only thing by Bowie which I've seen him acting basically is from the Twin Peaks Five Walk with Me movie. A lot of the promotion had like made like a big deal about like how David Bowie is going to be in it, but
Yeah.
but it's there for like a few minutes, and there was a rumor that David Lynch didn't like Bowie's acting or something, so it had to be limited to that.
Well, David Lynch would have had experience with Bowie acting since Bowie was also in the old Dune movie that Lynch directed after the whole canard with Alejandro Jodorowsky going super over budget and wanting like Salvador Dali as Emperor of the Galaxy and stuff like that.
Yeah, Bowie wasn't in that movie though. Bowie wasn't in Dune.
Wasn't he? Oh no, it was Sting. I'm an idiot.
Yeah, Sting. Yeah.
Okay.
Sting was, yeah. So, yeah, Lynch. By the way, Bowie was one of the first to endorse David Lynch when he made his first movie, Eraserhead. That's a weird movie. That's a weird movie, which also worth watching. And Bowie was one of the first to endorse it. And when Bowie in the 70s, when Bowie endorsed something, that was the seal of approval. Bowie was the style trendsetter in the 70s.
Yeah, so I guess another criticism which I've seen kind of related to Bowie's acting in this movie in particular is that it's just Bowie acting as himself. So
yes, this is in this period. Bowie moves to America, and he moves to California. And California doesn't do him good. California really, the spirit of California really destroys him. He was already aware of California being. This is the time when California started turning bad, and so first of all. Addicted to cocaine, like copious amounts of cocaine. He hardly eats. He just snorts cocaine all day, works all day on his music and all that. He has his personal assistant, Coco Schwab. If you saw the Iron Man movies and you saw Pepper Potts, that's the exact relationship he had with his personal assistant. She basically did everything for him at every level, and she at this period she kept him alive to the point where she would force feed him, just force him to eat, and there are rumors that she even saved his life a couple of times when he went into cardiac arrest or whatever because of the drugs overdose or whatever. So he is extremely thin. Now, there was a documentary released at 75, made in about an hour long, I think, about Bowie, his later album. And he looks like an alien. And Nicholas Roeg saw it. He said, "That's my alien." That's exactly because if you read the book, if you read the book, the alien looks human, but there are things about him that are a little bit different. He is very thin, for instance, and so people kind of detect that he's an alien. They basically, a lot of them think that he's queer. But yeah, and Bowie, of course, was known at the time to be queer. Yeah. So Yeah. So Bowie basically does very little acting. He is a good actor. He was already an accomplished actor. He had lessons in acting, but he does very little acting in the movie. It's his mannerisms. He was just being himself most of the time.
It was simply being recorded, you are saying, basically.
Yeah. He was just Rogue just told him to be himself because he was at the time so alien that he was yeah.
So I guess it wasn't. So it's not like the movie was like a vanity project or something like that. It's just that how he normally was back in that period basically fit the source material. Yeah, I see.
Now Nicholas Rogue did actually he is a British director, and he in a previous movie he did use Mick Jagger and a few other and some of the other guys, but so you know it part of the whole thing. By the way, another thing about the movie, the driver, the Newton's driver, Arthur, that's who drives him around. That's Bowie's bodyguard in real life. So yeah, so again, that's if you look at the Cracked Actor at the documentary, you see him driving him around. So it's the same in a limousine. So it's kind of the same thing.
So basically, he brought he brought his own situation on the screen, more or less, more than. I mean, the movie is an adaptation from a book, but I don't think the character is portrayed exactly in that way on the book, I suppose.
No, like I said, he is portrayed as very alien, very frail. The gravity of Earth is a problem for him because he doesn't weigh much. So it is. If you read the book, you kind of you can see Bowie in that. Let me just let's talk about the book. I'll say something about the book.
Okay.
A few things. Written by Walter Tevis. Now he wasn't a science fiction writer. He was a fine writer, fine literature. And this is, if you heard me speak, I have this. I divide periods, and I talk about this between 1915 and 1965. The book comes out in 1963. 1915 and 1965 is what I call the transitional period between the modern age and the pop age. And for the pop age, this is what I call the Hollywood period. And for the modern age, it's what I call the late modernist period. And in the modern age, the belief was that man is progressing towards perfection. Yeah. So and the pop age was already said. Look, we are not progressing anywhere. I mean, we're just the world is already good enough, and just finding ways, basically finding heaven, trying to reach heaven in the present, to create all sorts of heavens in the present. So whereas the modern age is about reaching heaven in the future. Now, in this period, you have fine literature starting to write science fiction, using the medium of science fiction to write the books, and you have the rise of science fiction as a popular medium, kind of pulp fiction, until then begins what I call the rock and roll period in 1955. Which in the rock and roll period, so that from 1955 to 2005, that's when science fiction writers actually become good writers, start to write only science fiction, like Philip K. Dick. Yeah. It's no longer because if you read science fiction before that, the writers are not it's very
Before we have, I would say, the pulp page, in which most of the stories were published in magazines and so on and
Yes,
so forth.
yes,
It was
yes,
more
yes.
of a volume thing than a quality thing, I
Yes,
suppose.
short stories and that. Yeah. So if 1963 is in that also in that transitional period between the Hollywood period and the rock and roll period. So I'm always interested to see because so fine literature. The reason they were using this medium of science fiction is basically to talk about the collapse, the fall of man, the collapse of it. It's almost always dystopian. If you think about Orwell and Huxley and all that, Kafka, and the book. So the book. First of all, you can see the mediums he's talking about. It's classical music and painting. The book is basically built on the story of Icarus, who tried to fly to the sun and failed. That's the chapters are Icarus ascending and Icarus. It's all about Icarus. And it's about an alien who comes from a planet in the solar system. So the Earthlings don't know about that it is, and it's a planet that is a lot more advanced, but destroyed itself in a nuclear war. And it's a planet called Anthea. There are only 300 of them left, and they have about 50 more years to live before they run out of water, and so they have very little resources left. They have knowledge, technology, and all that. So
they but they have destroyed their infrastructure. Quite the trope in that years, I would suppose, because the fears of nuclear war was pretty high.
I mean, they said that they still have spaceships. They just don't have the fuel. They don't have the fuel. They don't have. They know they have the technological knowledge, but they don't have resources. So they basically pool all the resources to send one person to Earth. Now, why do they do that? Because they watch, they get the television from Earth, television and radio that they can get from Earth, and they see it, what's going on there, and so they think they can come to Earth. Like I said, there are only 300 of them, but the thing is that they believe that the Earth is doomed. Because they say that they're going through the same processes. They're going to destroy themselves in a few years in a nuclear holocaust, unless we do something. So they send him, and he's supposed to build a spaceship that will bring all of them covertly. They have the technology to do it covertly, without the radars spotting them. And the plan is to infiltrate places, powerful places, and change society in a way that will save Earth. That's the plan. Now he comes to Earth. He begins. The first thing he does, he creates patents, because of the based on Anthean technology, he creates new patents and makes a lot of money. Becomes a billionaire, almost a billionaire. There was no billionaire back then, but hundreds of millions of dollars he earns because he becomes like just the richest man in the world, basically, and kind of a hermit. So it's kind of
given inflation, he will still be the richest man of the world today, basically. That's that amount of money.
Yeah. So it kind of Howard Hughes. It's based on Howard Hughes because he's kind of a recluse, a hermit. But you know, the American government does notice him, and they have spies there, and eventually they arrest him. They figure out he's an alien. He actually confesses it to you know, there's this professor Dr. Bryce, who is also in the movie, who kind of who figures out as well. He sees that there's something very strange about this guy who's the other humans don't seem to notice it, but he notices that this guy is too brilliant, and so he starts working for him, and eventually gets him to confess that he's an alien. The thing is, Newton is kind of naive. He calls himself Newton, yeah, the alien. He's kind of naive, even though this is one thing. Again, you talk in fine literature, the new mediums of pop, they were usually seen as part of the degradation of man. So, television, the Anthean were watching television, but television doesn't show you really the truth about Earth. The television shows kind of they gloss over things, and so when it comes to Earth, he realizes that it's not as rosy as the American TV makes it.
Yeah.
Now, by the way, I disagree with that because I think that if you watch television, you will also see the other stuff. It's not all of television, but now this is something that okay. Before we talk about the government, Newton goes through a process. First of all, he starts to be corrupted by the Earthlings. He becomes an alcoholic, and all sorts of indulgences. But more than that, he starts to believe that because of that, basically, he starts to believe that his species will not be able to make it on Earth. That they will be corrupted and destroyed by Earth's culture. So he starts to have doubts about his mission. And then he's arrested by the government. And they run experiments on him, but they actually know what he is. The thing is, so they hold him for like 3 months or something like that. And it's the CIA that holds him. And then they come and tell him, we have to release you. Why? Because it's 1976. It's actually 1976. The book is written in 1963, but the year it lands, I think, it's 1972, and the year it ends, it's 1976, and that's an election year, and the Democrats are in control. Actually, he was wrong about that, but and the businessmen and the Republicans are blaming the government for arresting this amazing businessman, amazing innovator and entrepreneur, and so arrest for being a dictatorship without any cause. Yeah, they don't give a cause. The cause is that he's an alien. So they have to release him.
They can't exactly say.
Yeah, they have to release him. Now, they release him, and the problem is they have to release him through the FBI because the FBI arrested him. And the FBI say, okay, we also need to run some checks for our files, and they don't know he's an alien. So he tries to tell them, you can't do that thing on me. That they X-ray his eyes, and because he sees X-ray, and they don't believe him that he's an alien. Tell him no problem with that, and it makes him blind. It makes him go blind.
In the movie, it's portrayed a little differently.
There are a few things different. When he comes out, he decides go he becomes a musician, and he releases an album, which is basically a message to the Antheans that he decided to forget about the mission because he believes that the Earth is doomed and it doesn't even have 50 years. It's better for them to stay on Antia for 50 years. So that's basically the story of the book. Now the
that
film
was a bit of the spirit of the time, that the Earth was going to be doomed in before 15 years because the whole world was going to go and so on and so forth.
Yes, and by the way, he actually contributes to it because his technology is then incorporated by the American government to become even more dangerous. And okay, so in the movie, now the movie is part of pop culture, and you see the mediums is, first of all, you got pop music playing. It's alinear. The modern age was linear. We are progressing. This movie is all about alienarity of the other medium is television, and he can watch several. Dozens of
television at a time. Yes,
a dozen TV screens at a time, and see all of them. And he gets kind of in an alinear thing. So it's again it's all at once. It's not in progress. It's not progression. Those are already. This is the rock and roll period. Yeah. So in the rock and roll period, the mediums are pop music and television, yeah. And the different so he it doesn't really discuss. Rogue doesn't discuss the doubts that he has about the mission, but he focuses a lot more about his corruption by the Earth people.
You can say it's more of a character movie than a plot movie, more or less. The mission is pretty much forgotten at some point because he becomes involved inside of human culture, and he more or less. I wouldn't exactly say that he forgets, because he still tries to complete the mission in the movie. If I'm not wrong in another way, but I would say,
it becomes more human. And when they do the X-ray thing, it doesn't make him blind, but it makes his eyes forever being fixated into human eyes. He has contact lenses that makes his eyes look human, and he can't remove them anymore. So that just shows him becoming human, basically.
It's the usual symbology about the eyes being the window about the soul, and so on and so forth.
What was I about to say?
I'm sorry.
Just a minute. Okay, one thing is, the TV screens. You see that when he watches TV, he's kind of basically being addicted to television. He does it at first. He does it to get information, to continue to get information, but then he becomes just addicted, and to TV. It's basically, kind of preempts the whole cybernetics, what I call the cyber period, when we are part of. Actually, Bowie at that year in '76, in the next album, he has a song called TVC15, which is about him watching TV and getting sucked in into the world of the TV, just into the TV. Again, he was dealing a lot back then with the technology, what he does. He was doing electronic music at that time, and he was actually he was supposed to write the soundtrack, but I think what he wrote. Okay, so he wrote electronic music stuff, and I think what he wrote Nicholas Roeg didn't like. But some of it finds its way into the. For those who know, some of the ideas find a way into the albums he made in '77. The two albums that ambient, which are Low and Heroes. Basically two cornerstones of ambient
So
music.
he used the stills from the movie as album covers too, as you said before. I would say that the movie remained in his mind for quite a while when he was composing it.
Yeah. I mean, it's his. Yeah. Yeah. What I want to say. One more thing about Walter Tevis, the writer. He was an alcoholic and a gambler and all that. So a lot of the books he wrote were about people who kind of get addicted to all that stuff, or just get into that. A famous book he wrote is The Hustler, which was made into a movie starring Paul Newman, about the pool shark, who was who gambles, plays pool and gambles, and until he goes against the famous Minnesota Fats. And The Color of Money, also a sequel to that movie. He wrote a sequel to that book, which was also made into a movie with Paul Newman by Martin Scorsese in the 80s.
I remember. Yeah, no, I remember that. I connected the movie.
Yeah, The Color of Money. And The Hustler came in the early 60s. Yeah, so this is about the book. You see the the book is a lot about the fall of man, about the fact that progress leads not to a modern. It's the decline of modernism, basically, because it says that progress doesn't lead to utopia in the future, but leads to destruction. But pop culture had the pop age had a different way to use science fiction. It was basically using it to imagine all sorts of futures, because if we're not progressing, the modern age thought that we are progressing towards we know where we are progressing to. We are progressing towards this society that is equal and free and all that, and enlightened and all that. Once that kind of crumbled and fell apart, you could suddenly imagine a lot of futures. Yeah, and this is why in the rock and roll period, which just as the modern age was collapsing completely, you had all those good writers coming in and writing science fiction and imagining new all sorts of futures.
You could say that science fiction in that era was freed of ideology, basically, and became more linked to pure speculation, by not being necessarily about the future of the brilliant future of humanity that will progress towards utopia. We can now talk about the several things that can go different or wrong, or can change in the future, and so on and so forth. And from there, you can explore the problems of today. You can explore the problems of today through an imagined tomorrow, more or less. Which I would say it's more or less the point of science fiction since the origin. But there's also a bit of this problem of ideology, of having an agenda when you write, more or less.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I don't know. Do you think that basically that's still the role of science fiction right now? Has that changed? I guess.
I think now it's more about fantasy, and the reason why, because I think that we have already reached the point that we can create new worlds. Yeah, I mean, I talk about how we create universes now. So now it's about creating interesting worlds. we are creating universes. Yeah. So and it's we're on the cusp of it of just creating imaginary universes in cyberspace. So now it's and the different. I mean, science fiction, like you said, is connected to our reality. This is fantasy was still in the rock and roll period. Fantasy was still kind of denigrated because whereas basically the nerds were denigrated in the rock and roll period. It was all the jocks were one, so all the nerd mediums, even though they were also blooming, comic books and science fiction and fantasy and video games. And they were also making great strides but they were seen as something that only kids do or losers, nerds. Yeah. And if you if you play video games, it means that you've never slept with a woman. Yeah. That was the or read comics or science fiction and definitely fantasy. No, science fiction. No, science fiction did have more. Could be cool because if it was connected to our reality and said something about our reality, it was respected in the rock and roll period. But fantasy, which tries to imagine completely different worlds, that was not respected. Now it kind of switched, and we are more about fantasy because we are actually. I think our world is not that interesting anymore. I think we've all kind of realized
that's a way to put it.
We've all kind of realized that we're not really. There's not really any more place to progress to from here. We better preserve what we have and hope we still we can preserve it. And in the meantime, the interesting stuff is to be created in other universes. That's the
right. Yeah, I mean the whole thing about space exploration as a topic is kind of dead. I mean, I guess that's Elon Musk and his stuff, but it's not. Yeah, sorry.
That for now. Yeah, that for now. Until maybe there'll be more. Until the technological breakthrough.
It was mostly a problem of logistics on that issue, on that side, because we reached the moon, but most of the solar system at the moment we don't. There is no real economic incentive to go and exploit the resources elsewhere.
Exactly. Yeah.
For the moment, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking mostly of anime, but not just anime, but I guess nerd stuff in general. I kind of felt like there used to be more stuff about going to space because it seemed more plausible or something. Like it's the next frontier or something. Whereas I mean, it doesn't feel like that's going to happen anytime soon, I guess. So going back, what is it?
Nothing. I just wanted to add that literally science fiction at the moment in those few last years, and I'm talking about the literary side of writing books. In my opinion, has gone back to ideology more or less because there is, for instance, the various happenings around the Nebula Awards in the last few years, in which a certain group of people, I'm talking about SJWs, have more or less colluded to always make the same people win, and so on and so forth. People like Jemisin and
that just means that's just because science fiction is dead as a medium. That's
on the literary side, yes, it's more or less dead. As a literary
this is what happens, when a medium reaches this point where it's no longer vital. Mm-hmm. It's been taken over by ideologues. Yeah, so
more or less, I suppose. Pretending that Jemisin can write a book on the same level as Dune has reached the point of parody, more or less. Because I don't know if I read that stuff, but
I mean,
My
I mean, but even with stuff like video games and whatnot, isn't there like don't the people who make video games, or at least the journalists anyway, believe in basically offer they have a modernist, you would say, Zarathustra kind of view.
but there are people fighting back, and it's and it feels more like censorship of a medium that is still alive. Remember, I mean, censorship of mediums has always been around when they were in the strength. Comic books, comic books were put under the yoke of a code in 1954. Hollywood, in 1934. So it's now it's YouTube, and video games. What can you do? It's always this, but the thing is, even when you have censorship, you can still, if the medium is still vital, artists still find a way to get the message through.
You can always circle around.
Yeah, because there's this view going around these days that culture flows down from the low or from up towards the bottom, but I guess you don't believe in that.
No.
No. I guess in the past it was more the right doing the censorship rather than the left. If we ignore the the Eastern Bloc countries, if you just focus on the West, it seems.
Not exactly. No. There was always, the progressives were always, but again, the question is, you have, there are three periods in for medium, which I talk about. It begins as a pop medium, seen as this entertainment thing, that low, vulgar, and which only the common people and the children like, and then this. And which I claim is always the most. This is where the geniuses come from, always. When a medium is in the pop age, is in its pop period, this is when, or pop phase. This is when it creates the geniuses, and this is also when it gets censored. Then it enters what. It gets censored by the elites, because who believe that it corrupts the youth. And it enters the serious phase, in which it starts to be regarded as serious art. And there's still censorship coming, but the liberals then see it as art, so they defend it. They give it a stronger defense. I think video games are now being seen as serious art, and there is defense being given to them, like Supreme Court in America and all that. It does give them defense. It's just and then the third phase is when it's high art, and high art is just when it just disconnects and becomes this niche of just people who believe that they are the ones who are, it's elite, they're just elitists who believe that that this is
it's basically something for just a small group of people. It shouldn't
small
be
group, and then it becomes kind of very ideological, preaching to the crowd kind of stuff, and has no effect on society whatsoever. And look, and science fiction, I don't know if they consider it high. I suppose they do. But I mean, science fiction has no effect anymore. Science fiction on pop, on society, on our culture. What science fiction book has any kind of effect? recently.
You're perfectly right on that. At the moment, since at least since the well has been poisoned, let us say, because there still are authors that would probably have some effect on society if they let them be known. You know what I mean? But now we have a science fiction literary narrative, basically, from people like Jemisin and so on, which is pure CRT in space, and that's it. And you don't get to be famous if you don't toe the line.
I
You
kind
don't
of.
get to be famous. You don't get to be famous at all. I don't know any science fiction writers. I'm not familiar with any.
You're
Like,
right. There's very few. There's very few that are famous. Perhaps I am part of the niche. This is why I'm mad, basically, because I'm still in there and I see the ruin of the medium.
yeah.
And
Well,
this
look,
makes me
this is
mad
just
because
this is just how it goes. I mean, you have to accept. I mean, look, me, I'm such a music lover, pop music lover. But I accept that that's it. It's over. Music does not. Music doesn't matter anymore. At the moment, at least. Not the type of anything that came out of the rock and roll revolution. Just doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah. There also seems to be kind of a conflict between the audience and the creators, with the critics usually taking the side of the creators. I've seen many times. So, so I guess the creators will say stuff like they are being harassed by gamers or whatnot, and the critics will usually side with the creators usually because they come from the same crowd, I guess.
Yeah, but again, it's only when the medium is I don't know, because it used to be the greatest harassers of creators used to be the critics. I mean, I remember again in the rock and roll period, the music critics, they were merciless, the ruthless. When they wrote about music and to the poor artist, you'd feel sorry for the artist.
Yeah, I was thinking of stuff like like those Rotten Tomatoes reviews where like the audience will give it a very low score, but all the critics will try to defend the artist.
Yeah, okay. So cinema is now completely high art. Yeah, it has really. I talked about I have no idea that the movies that get nominated to Oscar. I have no idea what they are. No interest.
Yeah, same here. I don't know anybody who pays attention to the Oscar anymore. So
we talked about this dynamic. I say that last time. I roughly agree, but I don't think it's so simple. I roughly agree. I roughly agree that shit is going down, but there's also there is this dynamic of things being brought up from pop culture up to high art, but there's also stuff that starts as high art, and perhaps it's simply because it's sold enough. Like you could argue that, for instance, Homer
it
once
doesn't
was
start
pop
as
art.
high art. It starts as pop art, then it becomes high art, and then another medium takes from that, from the high art, and take some stuff from the high art of the I mean, for instance, classical music became high art in the 20th century, and then came pop music, which is a different medium. It's a completely different musical logic. The American pop music of the 20th century, and it started to take all sorts of stuff from the classical music, from high art. Yeah, so this is how it is affected, but. It's the stuff of classical music of high art is the thing that was pop in the 18th century. Yeah, so
And this is where we have problems, because I don't know if it was pop, if Mozart was, was composing for the Austrian court and so on and so forth.
It was composing for the Austrian court because they were the only ones paying. The only ones paying for music were the noblemen and the church. But the people were listening to the music, on the streets. It was being played on the streets, and people, the people liked Mozart music. The noblemen didn't think much so highly of Mozart, and no, and it's not just that. It's Mozart's again. It was seen as entertainment. That's the thing. But in the 18th century, yeah, it's and I'm talking about instrumental music. Opera had a little bit more, was held in high regard, but instrumental music was seen as just for dancing, or for just an overture for an opera. It was not seen as a form of art in any way. It was seen as just this entertainment stuff. And this is the time when Haydn and Mozart and Beethoven took instrumental music and made it into and made it the greatest, still considered the greatest. And they are the geniuses, yeah. The biggest geniuses of the medium, and even if you go after that, you see that when you talk about the next geniuses, they were also doing, because Schubert and Brahms, so they were coming from the lead, from the folk song. They were doing that and all sorts of stuff that. Franz Liszt was seen as an entertainer. He was kind of this virtuoso pianist. So yeah, it's always it always comes from below and then just gets elevated. The good stuff, yeah. Again, I'm not saying that everybody working in the pop field is a genius. That there are very few because when a medium is pop, there's numerous people creating in it, and most of it is garbage. Yeah, but the stuff that remains, the stuff that's good, gets elevated over time, and
but
people.
Who was that said that 90% of everything is garbage? Because I remember someone saying that.
Yeah, but you don't think that you can say right now what stuff which is made right now in pop culture will be considered to be high art? Because, like, if you told people that the MCU might be considered high art in the future, I think, or the Twilight Saga or something, and they would probably laugh, I think, right now. I don't know if correctly or incorrectly.
Yeah, we don't know, but that's the thing. The intellectuals come and give it and give it a logic. Yeah, they give that's what happens. Yeah, because it is considered entertainment because it doesn't have a logic that the elites can understand. When talk about art, elites, when they talk about art, they talk about it in it means something. Art. There are certain ways to understand what is art, and then comes a new medium with its own rules, which they can't understand in their logic of what is art. They can't perceive as art. So they perceive it as just as entertainment that is gratifying the baser urges. Yeah. And that is why they also see it as dangerous, because it's gratifying base urges and that's thus corrupting the youth. But then come from the fans, people who grew up on this stuff. When they grow up, some of them become intellectuals themselves, and they start to write the logic to make sense of it,
So,
to write rules, the rules of the medium, and then you can understand it as an art form, and then it becomes that is when it becomes a serious. Yeah.
So you don't think that the logic comes first? The logic is something imposed post hoc later on the medium as a justification for why it's good.
Yeah, it's not imposed. It's just it's it comes out of it. It's organically. People just try to make sense of things. They try to make sense of why it is good. Yeah.
Yeah, because for example, when it comes to anime reviewing, some people complain that some reviewers use pretentious overthinking, quote unquote, to justify, why they like what they like, but it's not the real reasons. It's just a bunch of reasons which is supposed to make them sound smarter. That sort of thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
you have to. I mean, the question is, potential. Some will try to explain it by using the logic of other mediums, and then it doesn't really work. And this has always been my gripe against the Academy when it writes about pop music, that you are using the rules of classical music. You try to. It's ridiculous. Yeah, you talk about keys and yeah, all sorts of this bullshit. Which comes from, and it's not bullshit. It's a different language. It's a language of classical music.
Yeah.
And you have to and I mean my PhD. What I wanted to write, my doctorate was supposed to be writing the logic of pop music. But yeah, and they didn't understand it at all, and they rejected it. So yeah.
So
it happens.
thoughts, would you say that you would judge something like Dune and something like classical literature differently, fundamentally differently, because they have a
Well,
different.
yeah, for instance, has many things that come from classical literature, because Herbert took inspiration from a series of books that were written in the previous century about the colonization of Central Asia by the Russians, and you can see where the various characters of Dune come from. In that case,
I guess
Isn't
know
it influenced by Islam? I actually didn't read Dune, but isn't it influenced by Islam or some?
in part, but it's not exactly like it's not influenced by Arabia. It's influenced by Islam in the sense of Kazakhs, basically, of
Okay.
Central Asian Turkic tribes, basically.
I see. Okay.
So I guess the question is, do you believe, as Zarathustra kind of implied, that there is some kind, or rather that there isn't any kind of universal standard to judge art, like it's different for every medium.
I think there is a level of quality which you can consider universal, but it is difficult to define. Let us say it is the kind of thing often that people recognize when they see it, which is sometimes the problem, more or less.
Yeah, I think also the problem is that then it becomes like a sort of a question about taste, right? Anybody can say that they saw that thing in anything. Like there are people who will say that they believe that Fate Stay Night is a masterpiece or something.
Yes. Look,
Yeah.
everybody has a different taste, but the thing is, we actually do agree about masterpieces.
That's the point that I wanted to make. Yes.
Like masterpieces are works that a lot of people agree that they are great. Yes, that they move them. so there is beyond the taste. There is. It's just the diversity of humans, yes. But
Mm.
humans are not diverse in a way that we are also very similar to each other. So basically, to me, a masterpiece is just one that just has the ability to move
Yeah,
a great number of people.
yeah, but the problem is that like the reason why it moved people, like for example, the reason why the pop culture, or rather like the pop music you talk about, that it moved people, is it because of the reasons which were given later on by intellectuals, or was it more like something more not as high and mighty as that, but something lower, like that it just sounds good, it's good for dancing, or something like
Yeah.
that, rather than
First of, first of all, in the case of pop music, intellectuals is just me. Uh, uh, but uh, uh, I'm not inventing it. I'm just reading what pop fans are saying about what the music does to them. Okay,
at the moment, at the time that it came out, I guess. Yeah.
yeah, or just the fans of every musical style. They were writing about what it is, or so even we have recordings just saying what it does to them, and so from that I can draw conclusions about what it's about, what the aesthetic is, what is it that they find in the music.
Yeah,
Um,
I guess it's something like I guess because the anime is the thing I know about. So, for example, that there will be like an anime which is full of naked women, and that's the reason why a lot of people actually watch it. But then there will be somebody who will say, "No, it's not the naked women. They don't do anything for me. They don't matter." But it's this deeper reason. It says all these things about society. Look, it's art, isn't it? Yeah, so it's kind of hard to say.
The point is if a work, regardless of its origin, touches and talks about the human condition in a honest manner, and if it can be said to express something that wasn't expressed as well, or wasn't being expressed up to then in a language that people then can understand and develop from there.
Yeah,
Which is
because
why you have a few works that create, let us say, a medium, a new way of expression, and then people jumping on the bandwagon also. That
yes.
you know.
Yeah, that happens. People who don't have the understanding of
Mhm.
the what it does, and then in pop music, you always get this distinction that fans make between real and fake. Yeah, between real rock and roll and fake rock and roll.
Yeah.
Real funk and fake funk. Real jazz, fake jazz. Real trance, fake trance. Yeah. So
Funky
yeah.
motion and so on and so forth.
Hmm?
so yeah. So going back to the movie, I guess. So the movie is 2 hours and 18 minutes or something long, I think.
Yeah.
Did that feel too long, or did you feel like there was anything which should have been cut out, like for example the set scenes were they
I don't
necessary?
I don't really get what he was trying to say with the sex scenes. They are kind of ugly. Um, I mean, at least
They
a
feel a
couple of
bit
them.
tucked in, don't they?
Uh, Nicholas Rogue is known for kind of graphic sex scenes.
Mhm.
Um, and but uh, there were a couple of them that were kind of violent. There's this one at first that you have this kind of Japanese kabuki or no, which is playing while we see a couple of people having sex. That it kind of jumps back and forth, and the kabuki guys are sword fighting, uh, and it feels like it's trying to create a kind of resemblance between the two of them, equivalence between the two of them. Um, and then there's this scene where it kind of shoots the gun all the time, and it kind of feels like very bang bang. It's a pop culture thing. Yeah, you're shooting, doing bang bang bang, and it's a pop art thing. It kind of feels like, again, it's trying to kind of deconstruct sex in some way, and then in the middle there's actually a sex scene that is more tender between Newton and this girl, and but so it's kind of, I think so, kind of tries to show that, I think, him becoming human in the end, having sex like humans, also violent. Whereas at first he's being more tender. Yeah, but look, sex. You talked before about anime with the naked. When a medium is vital, it is where people go to find porn. Because that's when it's part of culture, it's part of society, and people just go there also to find the porn. Once they don't go to a place to find porn, that's kind of when the medium is dying. Like, for instance, people don't go to cinema to see naked women anymore, and then
You have a point. There was a generation of erotic science fiction novels. Now that I think about it, they don't really exist anymore.
Yeah.
But
Because once something becomes high art, it kind of gets cleaned out of all this thing that is considered vulgar. Yeah, so you don't have sex anymore. You have very little humor anymore. You don't horror is kind of seen as not and all sorts of action. All that is being cleaned out. So and now at that time, cinema was still vital, and people would go there to get sex scenes. So you had to do sex, but Rogue is a serious artist. So when he did the sex scenes, he was trying to say something. The 70s had a lot of sex in cinema.
yeah.
So,
It was also a time which was pretty grim on that point of view, because the blue laws, like the laws on sexual morality in most of the West, were still on the books, but it was nobody's job to enforce them. That created a situation in which a lot of things that today wouldn't be accepted in cinema were absolutely around, as you said.
Yeah.
Like, what was that movie with Brooks Shield, Pretty Baby, something like that.
Pretty Girl, I think. Pretty Girl, yeah. Pedophilia and stuff like that. Yeah. Yeah, it was all acceptable. It was basically breaking the old rules. Yeah, and before we actually realized, no, it's a sexual evolution. Yeah, and then that's the rock and roll period. Throughout the rock and roll period, that's a sexual evolution, and at the end, we start to realize that sex can also be bad.
Yeah.
Because before that, the belief was that the sex. The bad thing about sex is that it is sinful. It is a sin against God, and the people who were breaking out of that were saying, "Oh, sex is good," and they were trying to get away from this idea that sex is sinful, and in the end, you start to realize, no, sex actually, forget the sin part, in itself could be bad, for you in all sorts of ways, all sorts of sexual relations that are bad, all sorts of things about sex that can be harmful, and yeah, so then
again, liberals today would have you think that it's all going as intended, but there were reasons why at the time it could be a sin.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
So, thoughts? Do you more or less accept that, like a medium is vital when when people still go for it for the porn? Or do you think that's
No, I would in part agree because when I will say true traditional masterpiece is something that remains inside the human culture, inside the human spirit for as long as it can. It doesn't shy away from sexuality and so on and so forth. For instance, even in the Divine Comedy, you can argue that Dante is trying to bone to bone Beatrice for the whole time they are in heaven because he loves her and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
You know, it's not. I don't know if it is something about high or low art. I think that some works are masterpiece, and masterpiece will describe the human condition regardless of mores or fears of the moment in an eternal way, more or less, rather than in a temporal way connected to what we are doing right now. And people then copy them.
So
And
yeah. So I mean, other than the set scenes, I didn't feel like there was anything else which I would cut out. If anything, I kind of felt like. I mean, did you feel like the movies like explained itself well enough that, or like because like for example, I wasn't clear whether the mission that the alien was on was to bring water back to his planet or to bring his people back to Earth.
No, I don't know what he's doing. The spaceship is very small that he's building. In the book, he's building a giant spaceship for for 300 people. That spaceship is just basically a little pod. What he's been, I don't know what he's doing. I have no idea. And I don't think we are supposed to. Nicholas Rogue, all of his movies are like that. It's kind of like latter day David Lynch. It's alinear and kind of very weird and I think it's supposed it's a work of art. It's supposed to leave you puzzled.
I guess the reason why I asked is because I guess the question is whether it made you feel like the movie was incomplete and like it's like a go read the source material kind of movie. Like did you feel like the movie was telling to you that if you want to find out what actually happened, you need to go and buy the book?
It's a different art piece. It's not you will not learn from the book. You will the movie auteurs treat books as just something to draw from and then create their own story. It's a complete different story and
it's not an adaptation, I guess.
No. We actually today are back to adaptations. The time of the auteurs was the rock and roll period, and that's over. There are no more auteurs, and maybe there are, but they are working they're small, making small movies, and think of themselves as very important artists, but nobody knows who they are. Today, actually, the writers are back in the helm. Yeah, it's actually the writers, and the adaptations have to be actually. It's actually expected from the adaptations to be accurate.
Yeah. Do you feel like that has been an improvement or a step down?
That's just a different time. It's right for the time. Because like I said, now we are talking about. I mean, okay, so cinema was used then as a personal expression. The author was the director was a personal expression. Now, like I said, cinema is dead, and the only interesting cinema for me is the universes, which are created by fantasy writers, and the movies are basically just part of this universe that is created.
So basically, the movies are just advertisement for the source material.
No, it's not advertisement for source material. It adds to the source material. It's another story. The MCU created its own universe. It's not the Marvel universe. But you know, the MCU, that universe also has TV shows and also has comic books. It created something new, but very much based on but look, the writers are very important in the MCU, because you know, the Marcus and McFeely, who wrote the Captain America movies and then wrote the later Avengers movies, they became kind of stars. And in the rock and roll period, you didn't know screenwriters. They were nobodies. Now they are actually important again.
I mean, I guess the question is if it's a straightforward adaptation, same thing which is in the book, then what is the point of having it in film other than promoting the story if it's the same, right?
Oh, you know, just to experience it. I mean, I think the first time I noticed this was when Lord of the Rings was made by Peter Jackson, and it was a very faithful adaptation. You know, as much as it could be, you can't be completely faithful. You have to shorten it a bit, but
I mean,
really,
I guess most people would say that it was a step down, though, right, from the books, or not?
if you are not trying to make you know, your own statement and you're only adapting, it's going to be a step down. There's no you only hope that you will make it you know, as to be good enough to compare, but yeah, it's not going to be
In a way, if you are aiming to start adapting something, your ceiling is being as good as the original, which probably isn't possible because the medium is different. So it will still be different in a way.
Yeah, and movies are not long enough to be able to encompass entire books. So you have to shorten things, and that creates yeah, and
yeah, I guess that's yeah. I guess then there's television, which can maybe do a better job, but even then, yeah. So, I guess getting back to the movie, I guess so. You said that basically the book was kind of had a negative view about the future and whatnot. Did you feel like the movie had like the same message, or was the message different?
no, I didn't get the same message from the movie. The movie, first of all, there was no talk of about the Earth being doomed. It was all about and also actually there was no talk about what happened to the planet. It just said that there was a drought, and they didn't say that they destroyed themselves. Yeah, that the civilization destroyed themselves. So that's not. It's a different. It's a different message. It's not an anti-progress message. It's not about progress at all. It's about. It's a story about a guy who's being corrupted. Icarus is still there. We see the painting, at least, which is mentioned in the movie, in the book, The Fall of Icarus, the Bruegel painting. And yeah, it's you know, you see the story of yeah, he's trying to reach the stars, and yeah, and he falls,
Yeah, I would say the movie is a lot more about the character than the plot, as we said before.
Or a message, really. I didn't feel like there was an explicit.
I suppose you can say the message is about the corruption that is visited upon this person who is naive, who is out of his element and environment, and comes in contact with contemporary of the time American culture, basically, and he can't really come back. He can't really come back to his world after that. I suppose you could say it's a bit of like the hero cycle of the hero entering fairyland, the world beyond, basically, and coming back changed. But in this case, it's reversed. It's about someone from the world below, from the world beyond, coming to Earth and becoming human, becoming corrupted, not simply not a functioning human. That is the point.
Yeah, it is significant that the director is British, and European directors a lot of times that was the view of America, that it's kind of corrupting a European that goes to America gets corrupted by it. But you see that story a lot.
In the movie, I remember that there was some, I don't know what you call it, time displacement or something, like basically when Newton or Bowie or whatever was driving in a car and he would look outside, he would see people from the past. What was that about? Was that him seeing stuff he saw in television, or do you guys have?
I don't know. I don't know what it was. It's I mean, he obviously has some sort of vision that humans don't have, but
I think it is sort of implied that his senses as an alien being different, he perceives time differently, and it is probably why he can also watch more than a television set at the same time, understanding everything.
Yeah, like I said, it's obviously something about alienware, and now to understand Nicholas Roeg, I mean to understand an artist, you have to watch. I suppose you have to watch more than one of his movies, and then you can maybe pick up on. And I do recommend. I mean, if you haven't seen Don't Look Now, it's a classic. Donald Sutherland and Julie Christie. That's a classic horror movie.
Was Performance the one with Mick Jagger?
Yeah, with Mick Jagger. What else did he do, Nicholas Roeg? He did a few things. Well, I think those were the movies that were most famous. Well, here, let's see, just a minute. Roeg, what did he do? Director, blah blah blah. Walkabout Performance.
By the way, in the meantime, I in the movie I kind of got the impression that the villains were corporations or something rather than the U.S. government. I don't know. Maybe it wasn't like I.
No, it was the government. You saw them. It was kind of mysterious who they were, but you saw the U.S. flag. When we zoomed into the office, you saw the U.S. flag outside, and so it's someone from. It was the U.S. government doing
the kidnapping.
Kind of.
Yeah,
It's a bit of left a bit ambiguous, like the powers that be are messing with him because he's an element from outside.
Yeah, because wasn't that black guy, corporate guy, implied to be the villain or something? Part of the plot.
I don't think it's corporate. I think he's CIA or FBI.
I see. They don't really make sure that. Whether he's from a corporation or something. I see. All right.
Well.
So I guess another thing which we thoughts maybe you could talk about is you said that there's some conspiracy to do with the book's author and Bowie and
yeah.
So why don't you explain that to us? I guess.
Okay, well, about at the same time that this movie was being made, basically. So between in the 70s and before I think Valis came out a bit later, but it is writing a book is often more erratic than making a movie on some levels. You can don't touch it for months and so on and so forth. Philip K. Dick was working on his Valis trilogy.
It came out in 81. And then
81.
Yeah.
I thought he came out. I thought he came out earlier because later he says.
No, I mean, it's kind of autobiographical, and he's talking about stuff that's going on in the 70s. So yeah, so I can see why you think, yeah.
No, it is autobiographical. It is very autobiographical in a sense because when we talk about Valley's trilogy, we have to think about Philip K. Dick in a phase in which we could define the late stage of his career, in which you have to remember he had recently fought against dependency on heavy drugs and so on and so forth. But he was clean at the time, as far as I know, when he started writing it. And it was inspired by one thing that allegedly happened to him. That is that basically he felt like he was being contacted by an intelligence of either extraterrestrial or mystical or both nature, basically. He's not very convinced himself about the nature of it. Amongst the things this intelligence did, in his opinion, was that it warned him about the health of his son. And so he sent his son basically to be checked by doctors, but they weren't finding anything on routine checks. He insisted and insisted that the aliens are telling me there's something wrong with my son. Check better, basically. Eventually, a doctor says, all right, we'll make a complete checkup. Shut up, And they find actually something very bad that could have killed his son, an inguinal herniation, basically, that was caught in the first stages, and surgery and done. Now, up to this is in the realm of things that happened, but probably were mostly inside of Philip K. Dick's brain, more or less. But the point is that from there, he starts writing and thinking about religion, which is a theme, let us say, in many of his books, even if in the beginning it doesn't seem like he thinks of himself like someone that writes about religion, like on a previous book called DSC, which he wrote with Robert Zelazny. I don't absolutely know how his name is spelled in English. Robert Zelazny, that guy, Lord of Light.
Yeah, but by the way, I just want to say that again, the trilogy actually varies. The first came in 1978, and the last one came in 1982. So yeah, so over this 4-year period and the middle one in the 1980s, 1980, and so yeah. So yeah, 78 to 82 was the trilogy. I don't know why
he was thinking and writing about this clearly in 75, 76 too, when the movie was being made. That is the point.
Yeah.
Because later we see he talks about the movie more or less.
Yeah.
And say in that book in DSC, like I've got the old version in English with the introduction written by both, and it is very funny in the kind of introduction because Roger Zelazny is more or less saying this guy came to my house ranting about laser beams coming from space and writing in his brain, and he said we must write about this story of Gnosticism in a post-apocalyptic setting and so on and so forth. And I said, okay, basically. And Philip K. Dick is all calm and saying, I don't think I am any kind of spiritual writer. I don't think I am in any way prepared. I just, I had just this idea. I talked with my friend. So, it is about the time where Philip K. Dick gets interned in a psychic hospital after a while.
Yeah.
And this is also the time in which, at that point, he starts he starts writing the Valis trilogy. Now, of the Valis trilogy, we really have 2 books, because the third book, which is usually attributed to as part of the Valis trilogy, actually was written separately. That is the Transmigration of Timothy Archer, which is in itself a very good book, but it is a bit tangential. The book which is important for our purpose is Valis in itself. That came out apparently in 1788. In this book, it is clearly autobiographical, because we have 2 characters, which is Philip K. Dick himself in person, and his good friend Slover Fat. Now, Philip means lover of horses, and Dick is fat in German. I'm spoiling the fact that it is a secondary personality of him, because they say so literally in the same book later. But yeah, it is basically conceived as these 2 characters talking, one of which is Philip K. Dick himself, but in reality it is to be understood as Philip K. Dick talking with himself. And, many things happen inside the plot of the book, like he gets sent in a psychic hospital for a while. They can't help him. We don't even get an indication that he has multiple personalities, basically. He gets divorced, he gets with a girlfriend, the girlfriend dies, and so on and so forth. And all this conversation is there with his friends, having those conversations about Gnosticism, basically, until they see a movie, and they realize that the movie is talking about the same experience that Philip had with Valis, with this thing that sent information inside his brain, basically. And so the host lover Fat, which is Philip K. Dick, talks with they call him the actor. I don't remember if they even give him a name, or if they gave him the name of the character in the movie, basically. And they meet, and there is this whole conversation, let us say, about how apparently he had a daughter, which later died, which was Sophia in the flesh, more or less, which was Valis, this intelligence from outside the universe, more or less, which had incarnated. And nothing. What can I say? It is quite a mess of a book in many ways, but it is interesting also because it gives, we know that Bowie and Philip K. Dick were working on something together about the same time, because they both said it, more or less, but nothing came of it apparently. There is this conspiracy theory about Bowie having a daughter at the time that died, and I've heard that even in many internet pages this is talked about.
Bowie having a child?
Yes. It is basically hypothesized that Black Star was a tribute album to this daughter, to this secret daughter, basically.
So it's something new. Black Star came out in 2000.
Yes, it's the last, but you know, the way it is framed as a conspiracy now is that this thing that is described in Valis more or less happened, basically. And that now, when he was dying, Bowie made Black Star basically as a tribute album for this situation, as a way to come off clean, basically.
I see.
This is the way it is explained on the internet, at least. I thought it was entertaining to talk about this because it is quite a rabbit hole, you know.
I mean, yeah. I'm trying to think. Well, what in that movie could be, what in that album could be. I don't know. The album. There's a song that comes out of A Clockwork Orange in the album. But nothing of. Of course. I mean, the album. Before he died,
Mhm.
he wrote a play, a musical. Not. I mean, a musical of his, made of his songs,
Mhm.
about Thomas Jerome Newton. What happened to Newton? And basically, we're in the play. He's still alive, and he's locked up in a in an apartment in a New York high rise. It's high up somewhere.
Mhm.
In a very top floor. And he's just there, and he's having all sorts of delusions. I saw the play on the third night after it came out. December. Yeah, this was it. December. I think December. December 2015.
Mhm.
I was part of the David Bowie's official website. It was a community, and Bowie was actually part of it. He would come on board sometimes on the forums and talk to us. I came out of it very worried because David Bowie, his albums always start out with some sort of crisis,
Mhm.
and by the end he resolves the crisis. He creates a new identity to come out of the crisis, and just revitalize himself. And then the next album is the crisis of that identity, which then you have to come out of again. In this, there was no way out. It was complete dead end. It was depressing. And there was just it felt like death, and he was just losing his mind. And I came out of it really worried, and I said to one of my friends, from the community, that I'm very worried about him. I said that I hope that his marriage isn't falling apart or something. And she said, "Well, if he married me, there would be no problem." But yes, but yeah, and yeah, 3 weeks later, he was dead. Now, and we had no idea. We saw him actually. They went the gala night on the gala night. The girls wanted to wait to see if Bowie was coming, to wait by the entrance, because we had tickets to the third night. Yeah, because the gala night was, of course, all the fancy schmancy people, and of New York. So they stood by the entrance, waiting for him. And I was kind of hanging in the background waiting for it, because after that we said we'll go have the dinner. And then eventually he did come, and they were waiting because they were hoping he would talk to them, because in the past he would stop and talk to them. But he just whizzed through them. One of them took a shot, took a photo shot of him, and because I was standing in the background, I'm in the picture. And it's basically probably the last paparazzi shot of Bowie, and I'm in it, which is very cool.
Amazing.
Yeah. So yeah, he just he never stopped because he didn't want us to see his condition. After the show, he went on stage to take a bow, and then he went backstage and collapsed. Backstage, he had to be carried out, or they said that they actually waited for him at the entrance at the exit as well. When it was, they were hoping he would then, but then really they were just rushing him through because they didn't want him to see. He was hardly walking. He was he was gone. He was done. So yeah.
When it's time to close, it's time to close.
Yeah. Look, Bowie did everything on time, and just and I think his death right on time, because this is exactly when he stopped being relevant. This is 2016 was when the whole order of the rock and roll period collapsed completely. I mean, like I said, 2005 was when it ended, but still the order was still around. And 2016, that was Brexit and Trump and all that, and he died at the beginning of that. Yeah. And of course, like everything, so he put out an album that basically and the play also is about his dying, and the album also. So he, such an artist, he also even that and the album actually does have it talks about the afterlife. I mean, it hints that he's moving to another place. He doesn't know where. Yeah. So the album. There's a song called Lazarus. I think the play is called Lazarus, if I'm not mistaken. Lazarus is someone who gets resurrected. Yeah.
Yes.
And there's a song called Lazarus, which is in the album and in the play. And when I saw the play, there's a line in the song. He's up there in like the 70th floor of some high-rise building in New York, and he's singing. He's looking downward at the people below, and there's a line that says, and he feels the disconnect from them. And there's a line that says, throw my cell phone down below. And I thought, what a dumb line. But then when the album came out, and it came out 2 days before his death, I mean, he also died to promote the album. Suddenly the line made perfect sense, because he's in heaven and he wants to throw his cell phone down to us so we can call him. Yeah. It suddenly became just a line that really made sense. So yeah, so this is actually okay. So there is actually a connection between the album and the movie. Lazarus is Thomas Joe Newton. So
do you think it is significant that he would go back to the movie and to that period for his last album?
Yeah, and it's not for his album, but for the play. The album is not. The album has lots of other stuff going on, but the play is about Newton. And like I said, there's one song in the play also in the album. And yeah, and so yeah, interesting that he did that. He felt, I guess, like Newton, kind of. I mean, I felt he was feeling like he was leaving Earth, I guess. It was. Yeah.
I suppose that was the connection, but what do you think about the connection between Philip K. Dick then and the movie and then him? Because Philip K. Dick, in the book, more or less, he could simply be hallucinating because he's Philip K. Dick, but he more or less wrote a semi-autobiographical book, and he's more or less said that he was talking with Bowie at the same time.
It's been a while since I've read the book. I'm sorry, I didn't know that we were going to talk about it today. I didn't really see any connections in the book. There is this movie that he sees, I think, that is kind of like The Man Who Fell to Earth. And Dick said that he was influenced by the movie when he wrote the book. So that inspired that whole talk about, I think the aliens were connecting to him through the movie or something. Sending messages through that movie. There was this inspiration that came from The Man Who Fell to Earth to Valis, but I didn't feel it was very strong. And I'm not aware that they had any connection. I don't think they were working on anything.
Interviews and so on of the time makes it think that they were in contact, but apparently nothing came out of it. So
I'm not aware of. I mean, look.
So it's not like.
I was a big fan of science fiction and its effects. Of course, its work. I'm sure he liked Philip K. Dick, even though I don't recall him ever talking about him.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, the movie ends with the music from Stardust, which is kind of, you see Bowie and the star. It's a jazz standard, Stardust playing. So of course Bowie is Ziggy Stardust. So he's kind of referencing, reminding us that this is Ziggy Stardust who you are watching.
Do you think it's
with
like in Bowie's mind, is thinking like Ziggy Stardust is the character in the movie?
No, but Ziggy Stardust was also an alien. Yeah, so
yeah.
I was also sorry, we want to say something.
No, I mean, if you want, no, Ziggy Stardust, my latest video on Zarathustra Serpent, I basically analyzed this album and kind of turn it into a movie. So if anyone is interested about that album, which is to me the greatest masterpiece album, rock album,
So did this movie come before that or after?
No. Ziggy Stardust is 72. Which I believe. I believe is also the year that in the book Newton lands on Earth.
I was wondering if there was any connection between, because I watched your video first and then the movie, but I mean, is it the same? Is it really the same character? I mean, maybe towards the end or something. I don't know.
No, it's not the same character. Although it's also the rise and fall of a character of an alien. So kind of a similar story, but it's a different thing. And it's not. Bowie was completely in a different phase by that point. That's 4 years for Bowie or 3 years. That's a long time for Bowie. He went through several characters, for several identities between Ziggy Stardust and Thomas Jerome Newton.
Yeah, I see. So I guess it was just a happy coincidence. So thoughts. Didn't you say that maybe that you didn't find the idea that basically David Bowie recreated himself? I mean, he was still more or less the same or something, or not? Or do you basically believe that? Sorry.
Well, I agree that David Bowie makes a new persona for each era of his music, made a new persona for each era of his music, and that each of them was a development of sorts. But I can sort of also feel that they all they all are Bowie. I mean, they are all expressions of the same kind of character that he was projecting for his musical career. I would think. I'm no expert on Bowie, but this is the
I mean,
impression I always said.
first of all, Bowie himself is a character. I mean,
Yes,
because
that
his
is.
real name is David Jones. So
Yeah.
David Bowie is a persona in itself. But
Mhm.
I would say that it's he lived his those were identities. It's not just personas. He actually in the 70s he would actually live out his identities. It's and completely transform himself. It was just a complete transformation of his identity. He was still young. He was moving around from place to place, and it was a very volatile time. And I mean, and he did not believe in. No, he believed in. He's basically, if we talk philosophy, if we say that he's a philosopher, and kind of is, is a philosophy of becoming, not of being. Yeah. So he doesn't
Mhm.
believe in a steady that there's anything steady in our being. And a lot of his songs, a lot of his records say that. Yeah.
Mhm.
That it's everything is subject to change, and look at some point I started to feel like this life of change, of constant changing, is is basically always the same. And it begins actually in the album that came after the movie, Station to Station. So now he's talking about himself as moving from station to station,
Mhm.
which and he says in that song Station to Station, which is the opening song, which is Describe the Crisis, that once there were sunbirds to soar with. So sunbird is something that recreates itself. It dies and then comes back to life. It's a phoenix. But so it was the old identity dies and then the new identity comes out and just flies to the heavens, climbs mountains and all that, but now he feels like he's just moving from station. You're looking back, it feel like he was just moving from station to station. And there's like I said, it was going to electronic music, so in the background there's a train, electronic synthesizer making a train sound, wheels, when he's moving from station to station. And then in his next album, there's a song called "Always Crashing in the Same Car," which it's same thing. Not even more dark, yeah, because always. So everything I do, I always end up crashing in the same car, and yeah. So this is where he kind of felt that he needs to make a change, and after that, he, a little after that, realizes that the change that he has to make this time is to kill that part of him that always wants to get out, to transcend and be completely transcend the old what he was completely, and that part is Major Tom, the astronaut that kind of gets out of the world. So the song Ashes to Ashes, he buries Major Tom, and from that point on he becomes more stable. He still changes, but it's just part of him that changes. It's not a complete transformation. Yeah, that's the okay. Yeah, I mean, if you follow my series on Bowie, you and also my series on glam, you'll get that story. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Would you say that becoming is a bit like being, but in time, inside of time?
No, becoming means that there is no being. It means that the
But in the end,
everything
appears there
is
is.
always in flux. There's nothing stable. It's always in flux, and everything that we see as steady, it's just our perception. Sees that as steady, but what is going on there actually is chaos.
What
Under
do we perceive then? But what do we perceive then?
Well, we perceive, there's a kind of it is things that are in flux can reach a certain balance where for a while it's kind of the same. Yeah, you even though it always changes, it remains essentially the same, and that's the and what we see as a what's the word object. What we see as an object is basically something that temporarily has kind of is stuck in a situation where it remains essentially the same. On the atomic level, things are changing all the time, but it remains essentially the same. So we, with our perception, which we don't see atoms, but we see it as stable and as an object. That's the idea of the philosophy of becoming. Yeah.
So, anything more to add to that thought?
Let us see. I thought we would talk more about Philip K. Dick, but it's not really useful because I think we presented the internet canard of this thing. Just perhaps about Philip K. Dick's Gnosticism or something like that. But I don't know how it can relate. I guess it can sort of relate with Bowie in a way, because you could say that the message in the movie is a sort of Gnostic, like it portrays a person from another civilization and with a perception completely different from ours, coming to know the human condition and being corrupted by it. And in Gnosticism, as we talked the last time, the original sin is not a matter of morality, but a matter of knowledge, basically. But I don't know. I don't know what else to add about this, to be honest.
So I guess I have. Yeah, sorry. What is it, Zarathustra?
No, we're talking for 2 hours. This can be a good place to stop, unless you have something really.
Just a small question. What were where did Bowie get those, or rather, Newton get those rings from at the start? And
they made them on Anthea, from a metal that they have. I mean, in the book it is explained that.
I see.
I mean, part of this is kind of the FBI started to suspect him when start to see him selling rings everywhere, and they kind of looked at the rings and saw that the metal wasn't exactly gold, and all sorts of stuff like that. Because everything they knew, the Antheans, came from television, so it wasn't exactly accurate.
That's pretty neat. Yeah, I see. Yeah, I think we discussed most of everything which there is to say about. Sorry, thoughts?
Yes, I suppose
that there is to say about the movie. So yeah, I think we can stop this